Our next speaker is Vranac Srdjan. Vranac has been in the industry for a long time, and he is the CEO and team lead at Code for Hire. His talk is going to be nice. Help the person who hacks your servers to get your data. Please, a big round of applause for Vranac.
All right. Welcome to the talk, Help the Hackers Get Your Data. You might have heard this talk before, but I assure you this is a different one. So for starters, who the hell am I? My name is Srdjan Vranac. I'm the founder, team lead of Code for Hire. I have been in this business for 20 years or so. I run a small team of heavy hitters. You could say that I'm an architecture and software consultant, and I make developers uncomfortable and engineers very happy. I'm also a proud father of two beautiful girls. One is 9, the other one is almost 4 months old. If I'm not working in front of a computer, I'm out and about with my dogs or my family, getting lost on some trail looking for a new adventure. Now, as conferences usually have a limited length for a title of the talk, this is actually a full title of the talk. Help the hackers get your data. If you want to experience very, 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 very unpleasant things, depending on whose data they get, you might even face jail time. Yeah, awesome. I'm a cynic. I speak sarcasm as a second language. I have been doing a lot of rescue projects in the last couple of years, and I have been exposed to some questionable choices of developers, which did not help my sarcasm situation one bit. All right. Too many secrets. We are dealing with too many secrets on a daily basis in our professional lives, right? Some of them are less, some of them are more sensitive. And by asking few right questions at one point, I got an idea about this talk. When I started talking about this idea to C-suites, to vice presidents of engineering, to team leads, to tech leads, they really loved it, you know? Their eyes started shining, they started heavy braiding, that kind of thing. On the other hand, when I started talking to developers about this, again, it's not that important. That is the moment when I knew I was onto something. So let's manage some expectations for start. If you're searching for the answer, what is the difference between a junior and a senior developer? This talk is not for you. If you were expecting some kind of DevOps talk, hardcore security talk, you're going to be disappointed. If you are working in fintech, there is probably not a single part of this talk that you haven't heard, and I hope that you will be able to keep awake. For the rest of us, we know that security is important, but do we really know the fallout of bad security practices? I will be talking about secrets management while trying to look at it from a business point of view. This talk is aimed at developers who want to become engineers, which means that you are going to have to learn to speak business, and in this industry, this comes with the stigma of unclean. Hopefully, you will walk out of this talk with some new insights, with knowledge and actionable advice how to approach this topic and others. And please take note that every time I say you, I mean we, because I'm out there with all of you making the same mistakes and trying to be better. What I'm actually saying and trying to say is that you are going to have to take off your developer hat and put the business hat on. So, first takeaway. We, as developers, think and deal with cost as in the same way we think about security. It is not an integral part of our project lifecycle. More often than not, it is an afterthought. But when we start thinking in terms of cost and expenses, security starts to climb more and more on the priority list. And if you know how to explain that to management, you will get their buy-in to deal with it. And later, you will get their buy-in to do all the wonderful stuff you want to do, because now they know that you bring value and that you care about the bottom line. So, as some of you, hopefully a lot of you, know, security is not a simple subject. It is quite wide. for the intents and purposes of this talk, I'm going to focus on one part, which might be the simplest to fix, and it can be a project or a company killer when it is mishandled. So let's start with some factoids. A median of 1,793 unique keys is leaked every day. As my friend says, please don't put your all of your eggs in one basket. Please spread the love to Bitbucket, to GitLab, to everywhere else. It's lovely. I mean, as a developer, this might be not important to you. So let's try another one. In the first 6 months of 2019, 4.1 billion records have been exposed in data breaches, right? Still nothing. Okay. Let's try on the blunt approach. It's a shit show and you have the front row. Yeah. As a business person or as an engineer, this is a hair-raising experience, and in terms of potential damage to the business in both costs, both direct and indirect. So what are the common ways of revealing your secrets? One, and the most often happened, is when a malicious party gains access to your infrastructure. And it can happen, and it probably will happen regardless of your setup, which I hope you have one. If you're running Docker or Kubernetes, I hope you are not running it as root, and I'm hoping that you're running the latest version that has all the CVEs patched. If you don't have a dedicated infra or ops team, hopefully you have some trigger tripwire in place that, for example, is going to monitor your SSH connection, and every time an SSH connection has been established, an email is going to be shot to somebody, right? Which is kind of easy and nice to set up. The person who is going to access your server maliciously has to operate under the assumption that the tripwire has been triggered and that the stopwatch has started. And they have a limited amount of time to get as much data as they can before they are disconnected, and then they can filter through it later. So if you get a notification by tripwire, you can do stuff to mitigate that. So if you check with people who actually need to have SSH access, none of them raises their hand, says, okay, sure, you can shut down the server for start and proceed from there, right? So if you store your secrets in your config files or parameters YAML or config.ini or whatever the hell, you just handed the keys to your data to someone because you were nice and hospitable. And you are about to experience many, many things. Some of them are quite unpleasant. From incurring cost for a security incident review by external consultants, to losing profits due to downtime because of the review, to losing your customer trust, to possibly losing your customers, to litigation, and your best quality code have nothing to do with it and to help you with it. On the other hand, your attitude towards security, cost, and secrets management might. On the other hand, secrets and configs are really easy to commit to your repo, and then weird stories start to happen. So this happened to me, and this is how this talk actually came to be. One fine morning, I get an email from Amazon on a project that I'm currently working that says that one of the keys that we are using has been caught in the wild. And now that we need to rotate all of our keys and do whatever they need to do. So, okay, fine. We take a look at it, and it turns out that that key has been deprecated 6 months ago. Okay, we notify Amazon. Amazon says, cool. Everything is fine. We all move along. Everybody forgets about it. 6 months later, one fine morning at 6 o'clock, I get up, I make myself coffee, I sit down in front of my screen to check out my dashboards, and I see that something is off. There are way too many counters not sending data, and those that are actually sending data are way above the acceptable thresholds, right? All right, something's going on. I log into the AWS console, and this is where the roller coaster ride starts. The application is leveraging spot instances because they are dirt cheap and you have computation power at mass. There are no spot instances running. To make things even more interesting, the spot instance request that controls those things are gone as well. EC2 instances that we are using are present, they are running, but what we have running is not enough, and I cannot spin new instances because I'm blocked. This is trouble. This is going to be a long day. I'm trying to contact Amazon support. I'm not getting back any response. Time passes, 3 hours are gone. I have 3 more hours before people start coming to work, and I have to have some data processed for them. And it's time to make a call. I pick up the phone, I call the CTO. He's in a different time zone. I'm trying to tell him that we have a problem. Phone rings for a while, sends me to voicemail repeatedly because it is as o'clock at his time zone. All right, I have no other things to do, so let's try to contact Amazon support again, but this time I'm going to paste my phone number. Hopefully somebody is going to call me. But they don't call because my number is not on file. All right, time passes. Now it's noon, 6 a.m. Eastern Seaboard time. CTO is up. He sees the missed call. He comes online, we start talking, and this is where I realized I just had a masterclass in chaos engineering. So, the email that was used for AWS support is something that he does not regularly use. He checks it maybe twice a year. Yeah, awesome. Took him some time to find the password to actually log in. And he finds that the support actually tried to contact him, but as he's not checking it regularly, nobody had replied. So at this point, he is contacting the AWS support. He clears it with them. Another 2 hours pass. We are in hour 8 of this shortage, and information is now starting to come in about what has happened. You remember that key from the beginning of the story? Well, where Amazon said it was okay, for some reason it was flagged in a back audit, and Amazon decided to protect us by blocking our account. And of course, they used the email on file to notify us. So now that everything is cleared, the account should be restored in the next couple of hours. Okay, fine. I asked about the spot instance requests and all the other missing things. No luck. They are gone permanently, as the policy is to shoot first and ask questions later. In cases like this. Next few hours, and this is my fault entirely, because I didn't have this thing automated. I spent putting things back, everything back, and after some 16 hours or so, we were back in business and operational. So what was the damage? For that beautiful incident, $1 million in revenue for that day. And about daily wages for some 300 people that tried to use the system, but they were prevented from working, but still will get paid, right? Awesome. Yeah, you're more sophisticated than that. You're enlightened, right? You're with the hip crowd. You're not using configuration. You're using environment variables. Hooray! Huh? So you have a .env file for your local development. You have your .env file on the server, and they are not being committed, and everything should be fine. There is a chance that somebody might actually commit the secrets, but it is very low. Again, people do stupid stuff in production. I mean, what could possibly go wrong? Do I need to explain this? Good. Again, even if your environment variables are unindexed and they are used properly, for a skilled person, they are really not hard to collect, right? And again, we are back in the problem situation. Hey, we're using containers. Yay! Good for you. Sure. So you're now passing environment variables into a container, which means you're passing them directly to Docker engine, which means I can use something like this to list out all the variables. We're not even going to talk about the ever-increasing mess of needing to pass more and more variables to your containers. And if you're using Docker compose file, it might look like something like this. And as this monster starts to grow, how many hours are going to be wasted by keeping in sync newly added variables across the teams with .env files? And even better question, how are you sharing those secrets? Are you using email or chat client or something? How secure it is? But sure, you're going to switch to doctor secrets. Oh, I'm sorry, I cannot be serious about this. You're telling me you're going to use a file-based clear text located in run secrets and then in a variable name, right? Please, please tell me more about security. I would really, really, really like to hear. Even if you squint real hard and pretend that this is not an issue, you should keep in mind that some of the official images also contain vulnerabilities, and I'm sure that each and every one of you actually inspects the images that you use, instead of actually trying to play Pokemon because you gotta have them all. Now, if you're working on a project that has a dedicated infra and ops team, and they let things like this slide, you really need to have a long discussion with business present about how they are putting business in danger and that they need to improve, right? So it's time to look at the consequences of these problems. Up to now, I've been talking about some concepts. I still haven't used their names, so some of the terms you might know. In case you don't, here's your chance to learn them. Liability and criminal negligence, right? Here's the second takeaway. Ask your boss to have your company lawyer or counsel present and have a discussion what would happen in a case of data breach and subsequent litigation when your company is taken to court and you have to prove that reasonable security measures were taken. And then when they ask you how that database and secrets are being managed, you tell them in a config file, all right? And when they ask you, like, what does it mean? You tell them you store them in plain or clear text. And when they ask you to explain what does this mean, you tell them that anybody who can open that file can actually read the set secrets. At that point, lean back, relax, and wait for them to process the situation. And just try to watch and catch that moment when the terror goes into their eyes, because then you're going to be introduced to a nice term called criminal negligence. Yay, but you have insurance. Sure. Maybe you're covered and you're covered and this is a non-issue, some of you might say. Sure. If you're covered against cyber attack until it's time to claim it, when it's time to determine the premiums, when you are again going to prove beyond reasonable doubt that you had reasonable security practices. Good luck to you when you need to start explaining to them that you're keeping your config files in plain text. You got this. You will prevail. Or certification, specifically ISO 27000. Hopefully you get to work on a project where this kind of certification is a requirement. For example, when one of your bigger sales actually hinges on having an ISO 27000 certificate, and then you're going to learn quickly that things are really expensive and costly because your security and secrets management were not in your focus, and you were caring more about your academic reasoning and proving that you had a quality code. This is the second takeaway, or third, right? This is why I'm talking about cost and secrets management or security together, because more often than not, they are the same facet of the business. The cost and damage control and mitigation of risk by maximizing the profits for not losing the sales and potentially decreasing the liability potential. That was bad. So, how can we improve this situation, right? We know how we got into this situation. The answer is really, really, really simple. Secrets management application, right? But what makes a good secrets management application? What features should it have? For starters, it should have a ease of setup and operation. You should be able to set up and configure your new secrets system relatively easy. The configuration should be relatively straightforward and should not be ambiguous. You should also have a clear path to upgrade to high availability solution or multi-data center, right? And the way your application should interact with the systems should be as straightforward as possible. It is always a good idea to have an expiring secret, and your application should not care about this. Just that when it emits a request, fresh data comes in. On the other hand, the ease of these changes that your admins can implement, or new secrets, or changing the existing ones, should be as efficient as possible, as cost-effective as possible. And here is my favorite, dynamic secrets. At first, it doesn't mean much. But if you start thinking about this in terms of business, it suddenly opens up a lot of potential. If you squint real hard, all of your configuration can be treated as a secret. That means that it can be stored in a secret management system. With dynamic secrets, it means that depending on which token you emit, you will get different values. So now, that means you have a token for production, you have a token for staging, you have different values for them, and they are all centralized, right? Now add that to your local development environment, and suddenly you have a nice cost reduction and increased security, because you will not be sharing secrets anymore via email or whatever the hell, and the time wasted by your developers when they are waiting for somebody to give them access goes down to 0, and it becomes a thing of the past. This, after GDPR, if you still don't understand what this is, I'm sorry, you're beyond redemption, I can't help you. Choices of backends. This is where you can choose whether you want to use your local storage encrypted, or you want to use RDBMS, or you want to use some cloud provider or whatever else. And this mix and match system increases the value because you can tailor them more easily to your needs. And let's be honest here, we all like cost to be 0, like to be free. Unfortunately, it's not possible, but we can do a lot to keep those down. By having a straightforward installation and configuration, your team will spend less billable hours on those things. By having something like dynamic secrets, you can make your setup simpler, and you can have a more productive team where the downtime due to configuration becomes a thing of the past. So, tools that manage secrets are nothing new. They have been around for a while. There is quite a lot of them. This is just a fraction of them. Some of these tools are very good. Some of these tools are weird as hell, specifically meaning they require you to recompile the whole applications when you change the secrets and then deploy it again, because beyond me. When possible, I like to use software that is backed by a company. So, of course, we need to talk about AWS, because I don't think there is a situation where they don't have a tool for. Whether that tool works, that's a completely different story. So AWS Secrets Manager is their native way of securely storing static key value pairs. It does have some rotational ability, but outside of RDS and AWS, you essentially have to write those functions by yourself. Also, it is single region only. If the region lock is not a problem, there is a bigger potential issue, and that is the price, because it can wildly differ depending on your usage. So, first example is production scale web application, right? 2 SSH keys, nothing special, DB calls, 2 API calls per SSH per day, whatever. Excuse me. So the cost for this, $6 a month. Not bad, right? Let's talk about microservices. 5 million secrets, valid for 1 hour. 2 API calls per secret per month. $3,000. That's a lot. That's a lot, and that is a big difference. So now we're going to talk about the other option, and this is perhaps the most commonly used one recently, because when people talk about infrastructure management, this is HashiCorp usually comes up, and they have this thing called Vault. So why it is a good fit? Because it is a small binary to install. The configuration is relatively straightforward. With the use of SSL certificates, you can get nice secure HTTP transport. It can be done by a single person. It does not have to be a dedicated infrastructure engineer. On top of that, high availability mode is available out of the box. You can scale it up, whatever you need, or you can move it to console and Zookeeper. And you have the ability to select multiple backends, which is certainly a plus, which means that you can tailor it better to your needs. And of course, it has something called SHAMIR'S secret sharing algorithm. This is a technique that was developed by Adi Shamir. It is used to secure a secret in a distributed way, which means that the secret is going to be split into multiple parts. These parts are called shares, and these shares are used to reconstruct the original secret. To unlock the secret with SHAMIR'S secret sharing, you have to have a minimal number of shares that you define on start. The minimum number of shares is called the threshold. That means that you have an elegant solution to unlock and prime your vault, even if one of your shareholders is not available. One thing that is very important to say is that Vault operates exclusively in a whitelist mode. That means that you can access only things that have been explicitly granted to you. Vault has this concept of policies, which is basically an ACL, so you can use it to fine-grain the access to your resources and secrets, right? Which means that if the policy is not permitting access, it is explicitly denied. Because you can have multiple policies, when you put them together, if any of those policies allow access, you can get access to the said secret, right? But if everything is so good and simple, are there really no downsides? Well, there are. There are two of them that I can see right now. One is sealing and unsealing. In case of Vault being restarted, Vault application being restarted, your storage is going to be locked. You need to think really hard about the procedures for sealing of that, unsealing of that vault. How many people do you need available? How many shares are you going to use and stuff like that? The other thing is HTTP calls, because Vault communicates with your application via HTTP requests. Now, in 90% of cases, I'm sure this is not going to be a problem. But if you experience, if your network stack is overtaxed, you could experience latency. You can fix it and deal with that. But if you really want to push an issue, if on the one hand you have this potential of latency, and on the other hand you have a peace of mind and security, as a business-oriented person, I think the choice is clear. On the other hand, you can use HTTP2, and most of this stuff goes away. So how does it all fit together? A token goes into configuration. Ironic, I know. A token gets sent to the server, client token is returned. Only retrieval of the secrets is granted by the ACL assigned. When lease on the token expires, Vault token is used to obtain a new one. So what happens in a case of breach? Your tripwire system is triggered. Your files are downloaded, possibly your config as well. You figure out something is wrong. Nobody that should have access is accessing it. So you remove the server from public. You rotate the tokens generated. You update the config. You make your server publicly available, and deal with the rest of the reporting of the breach. Right? Now, the question that I've been asked, and I think it's a very fair one, is do you use secrets management on every project? It kind of depends. I have a list of things or a list of questions that I go through. Are we dealing with user data? Maybe personally identifiable information, maybe not. Sure, I'll use secrets management. Any kind of sensitive data? Yes, I will use secrets management. Any kind of payments or on the system? Definitely yes. If I'm in a position to make this decision, I go through this list and make it. If I'm not in a position to make this decision, I go to the stakeholders, to the management, to the business, explain my case. They can do a cost-benefit analysis and decide if the outcome is worth it. If it's worth it, awesome. If it's not, even better, more props to them. I would just like to have it in signing that you have been informed and that you declined. Because in case of litigation, it's nice to cover your ass. So, even with these potential drawbacks, using a secret management application is really paying off a lot, as your company or your product will be protected from unwanted liabilities, and in case of actual unauthorized access, your configurations will be safely secured. Because according to IBM's security, the average cost of a large data breach, which means that more than 1 million records are lost, in 2018 was $3.8 million. This includes many categories of expenses that arise from the breach: lost business, technical investigation, legal penalties, employee time spent on recovery, PR companies hired to handle the public disaster. With this in mind, I believe it is significantly cheaper to invest in engineering time to solve this low-hanging fruit than let it run its deadly course. Thank you.